I think Pakistan can be very proud of the role we have played in bringing an end to the conflict. I think we can very well say that Pakistan has been the architect of the peace. We, of course, this peace that we have achieved, ceasefire, opening of the Strait of Hormuz, a huge sigh of relief from all over the world. Uh, but of course, the peace will remain fragile until there is a resolution of the outstanding issues, the nuclear issue, the sanctions issue, the future administration, if any, of the Strait of Hormuz. Um, these are all issues that will have to be addressed in the forthcoming negotiations. And above and beyond that will be the structure of security in the region as a whole, which may not be formally on the table, but which will require some form in which to address the issues that have arisen between Iran and the states, the Arab states of the Gulf, the GCC states, and what would be the future relations between them. I think everything will change as in the aftermath of this conflict. So that will also be the backdrop of the negotiations that will take place now. Well, I think first of all, Iran has, although they've suffered hugely in terms of the destruction of the country, but they have emerged from this with a greater sense of confidence that the worst that could have happened to them, which was a combined Israeli United States attack on them, that they have survived that. And they have survived it with, yes, their regime, their top leadership has been decimated, but the younger generation has taken over. They seem to have got their act together. They have been able to take very difficult decisions. And therefore, Iranian credibility going forward will be enhanced. And also, some of their neighbors will have learned some lessons as well. That American security umbrella does not provide them with 100% of security. So they need to deal with Iran, good or bad, whatever their view may be, they will have to find an accommodation with Iran. So I think Iran has achieved substantial political and psychological leverage as a result of this war. Um, so let's see what happens. For almost 4 or 5 decades, every American president, since the birth of the Islamic Revolution in 1979, and the hostile relations between the US and Iran, every American president has avoided the temptation to join with Israel in attacking Iran because they calculated the consequences. I think those consequences have become visible in this war, particularly Iran's ability to shut down the Strait of Hormuz and bring 20% of the global energy trade to a grinding halt. I think that those are important lessons that the US has learned. And hopefully, as a consequence of this, there would be a willingness on the part of the United States to find some form of accommodation with Iran, of how how they can coexist or even cooperate in the future. That is the hope. But of course, there are many spoilers. Those who will try to destroy this agreement, destroy the possibility of a real rapprochement between Iran and the United States. Well, I mean, first of all, I think we have to see exactly what's in the MOU because the text, we don't have the text as yet. There is obviously going to be negotiations on Iran's nuclear program. These have been deferred from the first stage to the second stage. The agreement will definitely be different from the JCPOA in several respects. First of all, under the JCPOA, Iran continued its nuclear enrichment activities, even at a lower level, 3.75% enrichment they were allowed, and that had continued under the JCPOA. In this agreement, the US position has been that all enrichment activities should stop. Reportedly, the compromise is likely to be that Iran's right to enrichment would be recognized under the NPT, but Iran would then voluntarily halt enrichment activities for a certain period of time. The various time frames have been mentioned. So that's one difference. Secondly, during the JCPOA, Iran had nuclear material, but it was not highly enriched material, which was close to bomb grade. Today, they have 400 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium. It's buried somewhere or stored somewhere, one doesn't know. So, first of all, it'll have to be established where this material is and how this will be disposed, whether it will all be exported out of Iran or whether some will be exported and some will be downblended to a lower level of enrichment. And then besides this enrichment, Iran has 10 tons of other enriched material, lower levels of enrichment. What would be the disposal of that material? That these are all issues that have to be seen. And then thirdly, the issue of inspections. Would there be IAEA inspections? Does Iran still trust the IAEA? If it does not, then who would be responsible for the inspections of the materials and the facilities? So I think there are difficult and technical questions as well, apart from the political questions that will need to be addressed. So one will have to see. Certainly, it'll be different from the JCPOA. One can judge whether it's better or not better, but it will be different. Well, I think the Iranians have seem to have lived with the fact that Israel continues to be in occupation of southern Lebanon, as well as of southern parts of Syria, and also Gaza. I think what the understanding, it seems, is that there will be no escalation on the part of Israel vis-a-vis Lebanon, that attacks will not happen on Beirut. And I think on the other side, Hezbollah also seems to have an understanding that they will not provoke Israeli retaliation. So, but obviously it's a very fragile situation, and Israel can find a thousand different ways of triggering an escalation of fighting in Lebanon, which would be unacceptable to the Iranians. So the question will be, how effectively can President Trump control Netanyahu from doing some of these provocative steps, and how effectively Iran can support Hezbollah to prevent provocations from the other side. So it will be a fragile situation. I think if the negotiations on the nuclear issue, on the sanctions issue, etc., are going well, there could be a higher degree of tolerance on both sides with regard to Lebanon. But if those negotiations are not going well, then a Lebanese provocation could trigger the collapse of the understanding. Well, obviously, I think the compliance at the moment will be one, not to undertake military operations against each other. And I think it would be obviously in the interest of both not to do so. The very fact that they have agreed to a ceasefire means that if there is a resumption of fighting, then the Hormuz will close again and we'll be back to square one. And this is a position from which both sides have extracted themselves. So I think there's be incentive not to provoke an escalation. But a breakdown could happen because of hardliners on both sides. Apart from Israel, which we talked about, there is unhappiness among the Israeli lobby in the US and hardline Republicans in the US who are now openly criticizing the agreement, and they will be criticizing it even more vociferously in the coming days and attacking President Trump for having agreed to something that does not bring too much to the US in immediate returns. On the other side, in Iran also, there are hardliners. There have been demonstrations against this understanding. So there could be provocative actions also from some rogue elements, if you will, in the military establishment there, or among hardliners to take some provocative actions that could lead to a breakdown of the ceasefire. So I think those are the obvious kind of dangers that exist. But also, I think if the negotiations on the nuclear issue and the sanctions issue are not going well, if the two sides are adopting very hardline positions, and the other side sees that it's not going to get very much out of those negotiations, there could be a tendency on both sides to go back to fighting, to go back to provocative actions and break down the ceasefire. So there are huge dangers that are there in front of this ceasefire. It will be very fragile in my view. And I think that countries like Pakistan, together with the countries of the region, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Qatar, as well as the great powers, in particular China, they will all have to keep their foot on the pedal and preserve the ceasefire from breaking down because of all these various directions from which it may be attacked. Well, I think ideally, and I think it would be necessary, the parties will continue to need some form of intermediation. There is no trust between the United States and Iran, and this memorandum of understanding will not restore that trust. This trust will only come at the end when a comprehensive agreement is achieved. So there will continue to be a need for a mediatory power, and Pakistan having undertaken this role, I think can and should continue to play a role in the mediation. In my view, it is also important that these negotiations on the nuclear issue, on the sanctions issue, on the Hormuz issue, should be conducted at the diplomatic and working level and not in a high-profile way, because high-profile negotiations are prone to break down. There can be also breakthroughs in high-profile negotiations, but there also can be dramatic breakdowns. And therefore, if I were to advise our government, I would say it could be important to create some working groups on each of the issues, on the nuclear issue, on the sanctions issue, on the Hormuz issue, and to allow diplomats to quietly negotiate agreements on these without fanfare, without publicity, until there are agreements reached, and then to come to an announcement and to take the issues off the headlines. I think it will be very important that these negotiations do not take place in the glare of publicity and media attention, because in that way the politics may drive them towards hard positions, and hard positions would drive them towards breakdown. Well, ultimately, if you look at it in a very practical way, ultimately, what's a guarantee? A guarantee is a kind of commitment, and it can become a legally binding commitment. But then, legally binding commitments are also broken. Uh, so what is the kind of guarantee that would really reassure Iran, for that matter, or the Americans for that matter, who do not, Iran doesn't trust the United States. So what are the kind of guarantees that can be given? Those guarantees, I think, flow from the power of the two parties to do harm to each other. The US guarantee always is to resume conflict and resume military action. The Iranian guarantee is now very clear. The Strait of Hormuz is their guarantee. If there is a violation, they can go back to closing down the strait. But beyond that, I think the agreement, whenever it is reached, should be given legal shape, because the international community must buy into whatever is agreed, and it will be therefore at some stage, when either now or later, when the comprehensive agreement is reached, it will be, I think, very important to take it to the Security Council for endorsement, so that this will have legally binding effect, and violation will become more difficult of a legally binding treaty.